Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News, South Florida Conservative News Center, Thursday, October 2nd, 11:30 in the afternoon. And following a good round robin of Pete Hegseth shellacking the top brass about being fatties and communists, and Donald Trump moving his National Guards and federal agents into additional cities to clean up the trash that has been left by the socialists in charge, one would wonder, as I have been saying since 2020, is there a coup or civil war going on in the United States? And I guess we'll have to call it a quiet coup until we hear otherwise. Now, those of you who aren't familiar or are familiar with the old style, coups don't always have tanks running down Main Street and people getting put up against a wall and things like that. Sometimes they arrive through the back door. They can be there by eroding law enforcement, rewriting voting rules, and hollowing out cities until the people who built them and make them run correctly leave. That's the story of a quiet coup, a takeover of America's cities by socialist agitators and the federal counter operations to win them back, which is where we are today. So, what we're going to do here is talk about some of how this works and some of the things that you should be looking at to make your own decision whether or not we are in that situation. So, what is a quiet coup? In a two-party system, one side has embraced radical socialism. We have to do this for our burgeoning new YouTube channel that has 50 members, but they are dedicated to those 50 members. Thank goodness for them. We're getting it back after 8 years. So in a two-party system similar to this one, and one side has embraced radical socialism, instead of storming the Capitol, they capture the cities. The tactics is cutting law enforcement off at the knees through sanctuary city policies and progressive prosecutions. Progressive prosecution usually meaning 9,000 arrests and no convictions, to the point where people are like, why even bother to have a district attorney like Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, who is the biggest piece of garbage, racist shitbag I have ever seen. Larry Krasner has killed more black people than the Klan has ever done. But I digress. There are other cities that are just as bad. He's just the worst. Driving out the middle class with crime, taxes, and disorder. You're going to see that more with Mamdani up in New York, because that's the only way he can operate. He has to have a bunch of super low income welfare recipients, things of that nature, and illegals, or he can't function as a ruler. So what this means is they backfill a city. They've driven out the middle class because the wealthy can always stay there because they can hire private security, a la most cities you see in South Africa that have wealthy white enclaves versus the poorer white farmers. All right. Call it what it is, guys, right? So you're going to be backfilling the city with welfare recipients and illegal immigrants. Sound familiar? Could be, right? It's not a collapse. It is a deliberate reshaping of urban America into one-party fiefdoms. That's what they are doing there. That's why AOC can't be fired from her job. She has nobody in her district who's worth a shit anymore. So she is almost an automatic re-elector. If you want to know how AOC came to exist, she was part of an open casting call, and she is actually run by 3 or 4 different political organizations that keep her in a job. Go to southfloridaconservative.com, look up AOC. You will see the written documentation on that. And of course, you can look at the BitChute or Rumble and find the video on it. Not as detailed, of course. All right. So, what we're talking also, engineering of the electorate, talking about municipal ID programs like ID NYC and Chicago City Key, which are openly offered to illegal immigrants. DC was allowing illegals to vote in local elections. San Francisco lets non-citizen parents vote in school board races. New York City tried a sweeping version, but it was struck down in 2025. Piece by piece, they're manufacturing a permanent majority, citizenship optional governance because the people that are here that are non-citizens will vote the way they want them to because it is just more free shit, right? The pivot here is, but here's what most people are missing. The federal government is already treating this as an insurgency, just without using the word coup. Okay. People would say that if they understood it correctly, the insurgency was Trump, but Trump is not the insurgency. Trump is the counter-insurgency. Look it up. There's a difference. He did not have and still does not have complete control of the levers of power of the United States government. He's getting there, but he is not there completely. As you saw the Hegseth speech to the military, they know that their time of being obstructionist and left-wing political is over. Sounds funny when it says, oh, fat generals, fat generals. Let me ask anybody out there who's been in the military. So I am not a member of the United States military. Wait and tape, right? If you're a fatty and somebody decides, hey, specialist, let's get out and run the field. Can they get rid of your ass very quickly if you cannot make physical standards? Anyone answer that? Feel free to put it in the comments section. We will mention you online because we don't have Patreon or OnlyFriends or any of that shit. All right? But we will say you're a smart person. Okay? The federal officers guarding courthouses in Portland night after night shows you that there is a need to protect federal property. Operation Legend, which is the surge of federal agents into cities like Chicago, St. Louis, and Detroit. Federal charges are now starting to be leveled against these idiots for civil disorder, assault on federal officers. These are being filed when the local DAs refuse to do so, even against judges who have aided and abetted in the escape of illegal aliens from the evil clutches of ICE agents. Now, add this in a contrast, they call it public safety. In reality, it's stabilization. It's classic counterinsurgency inside our own borders. These are all things you can look up on top if you don't believe what we're talking about here. What the ordinary person can see when you're out there and you're looking around and you wonder if you're what we're talking about, if you see fortified federal buildings with barricades and armed security, if you keep hearing task forces that are having to be named suddenly appearing, federal prosecutors taking high-profile cases locals won't touch. That worked both ways. You saw it, especially that part of it, in the prosecutions against Donald Trump. There's a couple that'll cut both ways. Okay. Municipal ID drives everywhere. That is once again in these kind of cities where they want to make a municipal ID to then get you one step closer in their mind to full votership. So if you know what to look for, you'll realize this isn't routine governance in these cities. It is a battle for sovereignty over the American cities nationwide. There is no standing to the side. By allowing the sanctuary city bullshit to go forward the first time, which it was okayed to do by the socialists, it emboldened them to the point where they're secessionist almost. Okay. So you want to look at different cases and you don't believe this is typically normal or has been done by socialists before. Look at Brazil in 2018. The federal government seizes the security in Rio. Spain in 2017, Madrid suspends Catalonia's government under Article 155. UK's Operation Banner in Northern Ireland. This goes back. Decades of army support in contested cities. Other nations call it what it is. Central power reclaiming lost ground. We just package it in a softer, sombrero-wearing way. So if the president called it a coup, it would inflame the streets. It would spook the markets. We would crater and hand legitimacy to the radicals, meaning the socialists, meaning the Democrats. So instead, the White House runs a quiet counterinsurgency. They are securing terrain. They are bypassing rogue prosecutors, and they are grinding down the insurgent machine. USAID, things like that. We're cutting the funding of the war machine that the socialists have used against us. closing the border. We're getting rid of some of their soldiers, right? You would wonder how many people were out throwing rocks that were illegals. If you remember at the beginning, there were a lot more, right? Until we started to arrest and deport them. So basically, what we're saying is the quiet coup is already here. It was already started in 2020. It was moving towards complete takeover of the United States until the recent election. It isn't being announced. It's being lived in the streets of these major cities where the police can no longer patrol, in schools like Broward County, where ideology replaces civics, and ballots cast by people who were never meant to vote. And the counterinsurgency is here too. It's subtle, it's hidden, but it's real, and is being orchestrated in as good a fashion as it can so as not to totally destabilize the United States and its position in the world. Why are the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians laying around on our southern border? Well, because they want to see if their friends in the Democrat Party are going to unleash their troops totally out into the street, so that while the United States is fighting a pitched battle in an urban situation, they are free to do whatever the hell they want to do down south. Okay? So these are some of the things you can look at. These are straight up true. They are easy to follow. You can go to our site, www.southfloridaconservative.com. There is a longer version of this and also has all the citations. If you would like to look at that, it would be helpful to you in the future. So on that note, have a good day, and I will talk to you later on. Goodbye.